The road to success can be a little bit bumpy at times, especially if you decide to self publish. Our guest today, Chef Adina, went through that process when she created her book, Vegan Flavors of the World. This cookbook has not only been recognized and won a Zibby Award, it is also a cookbook that people love because she covers multiple cuisines in multiple countries. And guess what? Volume one is out now, but she's working on volume two. So there's going to be even more to love. In today's interview, we talk about her experience, what it's like to actually self publish, as well as we talk about some of the amazing recipes and how she traveled the world to actually create them. So if you're looking for your next cookbook, this is a great podcast for you. Or if you're thinking about self publishing, I think you're going to want to dive in because this is a great way to get not only a behind the scenes look at what the process was like, but also what it takes to create an amazing cookbook that the world loves. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our next interview. I'm excited today because we have an award-winning chef and author with us today to not only share her journey around creating a book, creating a cookbook, and obviously winning awards for it, but also self-publishing, what the road is like around coming up with something that you dream, that you bring into existence, and then all the work that it takes to truly get it out to the world. Not letting the publishers get in your way, not letting anyone tell you, well, maybe, I don't know. Instead, moving forward and making sure that not only our guest today was getting this great content out to everyone in the world, but doing it in a way that worked for her brand, her business, and how she's really gone from that and developed this amazing business around it. We're going to talk about all those things today. So if you're thinking about self-publishing, if you're thinking about writing a book, this is definitely going to be the episode for you. If you're also just thinking about how to create a well-rounded business and hearing a story about how someone built that from the ground up, I think today is going to be a great kind of eye opener for you, and also a good experience for you to hear what it takes day to day. I think sometimes when we talk about building these businesses, we get all excited and we talk about all the fun stuff about running a business. But I think sometimes it's fun when we pull back the curtain and we talk about the grind. We talk about the hard stuff. We talk about the stuff where it's like, I didn't even know I needed to do that to start a business. And our guest today has been through it all. So I'm going to ask a ton of questions. But before I get into our questions, first, let me welcome our guest. Welcome, Chef Adina. It's so great to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you today.
And maybe before I jump into all my questions and all my excitement around everything that you have been doing, let's give everyone a little bit of background. What kind of business you have? What have you been working on? When did you start? Let's just give them basic timeline, and then we'll talk a little bit about the book, self-publishing, and that process.
Absolutely. So, my business started probably like 15 years ago, and it kind of started before the business really started. So, I was doing a completely different career, which I still dabble in. But at the time, I always really loved to bake and cook. And it all kind of started with me wanting to do wedding cakes. And I dabbled in that. I actually made a couple wedding cakes for like friends and family. And after doing it, I just didn't have that passion that much anymore. So I kind of veered towards working at some like upscale restaurants and gluten free and vegan bakeries. And from there, I realized that I really wanted to be able to eat all the food that I was making. So I took all of the knowledge that I had and I converted it into a plant based diet. And the company really like came into like fruition during COVID because the other company that I worked for is in the entertainment industry, and it completely shut down. So I basically found myself not traveling, sitting at home, and my only activity was like gardening and cooking every day. And I was like, well, there's got to be a way to get my food out there in a safe way. And so I started teaching cooking classes and doing private chef experiences, meal prep and stuff. And everyone would be wearing masks, and then the clients would take their mask off while eating, and I would usually like leave or be in another room, so everybody was very safe. And that's kind of how Adina's Delicacies came about. And then about a year and a half ago, I just like woke up one day and I was like, I have all these recipes. I've been traveling. I really love global cuisine, and I really want to have a book out there in the world where it's plant-based food from around the world. Because like I know when I'm looking for recipes and I'm looking for like a vegan or plant-based recipe, it's like I need to buy like 12 books. Like I need to buy my Indian cookbook, I need to buy Japanese, then I need to get an Irish one. Like there's not one that has like multiple countries in it. And I was like, that's something I really want. And basically every chapter I kind of tried to make it where like if you were having a dinner party or you wanted to like make something, you could take something from each like section and make like a 3 to 4 course meal. That's why there's appetizer, soup, salad, bread section, entree section, and dessert. And that's kind of where that came about. And that's like how that happened. So basically, I was just like, I'm going to write a cookbook one day. And I was telling friends and family, they're like, yeah, yeah, okay. Like people just say that. And I just sat down, wrote my syllabus, and then figured out kind of like I was going to do like 5 continents, and each one would have 2 countries from that one. So I kind of figured out what countries I wanted to do. And Asia was like really the hardest because I visited a lot of countries in Asia. So I was like, it's really hard to only pick two. And I was like going back and forth, and I was like, maybe I should have like 6 or 7. And then I was like, but this book's going to have like 1,000 recipes. It's going to take me like 6 years to write it. And a friend came over because I'd just been cooking up a storm, and she's also vegan, and she's like, oh, yeah, I'll come over and try all the food and be your taste tester. And she was like, why don't you just divide the book into like 3 volumes? So I was like, genius. So that's kind of how that came about. And from there, I was able to kind of figure out the other countries and which countries I wanted to visit for the other books. And it kind of just went from there. And then I spent a lot of time figuring out like recipes, which ones I already had. And then I just started writing and spending like, I gave myself 4 months to write the book, which in retrospect was a little bit insane, but I did. I wrote it in 4 months.
Nice.
It was making like 5 recipes a day. So anybody that wants to make a cookbook, like, I mean, it's totally doable. I was tired. So just keep that just keep that in mind. And the dishes were just insane. Like somebody was like, you should do backstage footage of like all the dishes. And I was like, nobody wants to see that. It's just a hot mess. Like but yeah, there it was an act of love. And then the funny thing is that I was like, yes, I wrote the book, I'm done. And then there's all these things you don't think about. I was
Yeah.
like, wait, how do I actually publish it? And at the time I thought it would be really smart to like have a recipe card, and every single recipe would be like a separate document. That way, if like my computer crashed or a file got corrupted, it would only be one of the recipes. But then I found out that you really have to have it all in like one document. So then I had to reformat everything, and I put it in certain margins. But then when you finally figure out your platform, you have to figure out what margins you want. So like books come in like 8.38 by 11.5, or like you get a square book and it's like 7.5 by 7.5. So I had to figure out the margins of my book. And because it's a cookbook and I wanted like the images to be large and stuff, I was like, well, I think I want something that's a little bit bigger. And
Hmm.
so I basically, when I figured that out, I had to reformat the entire book, which doesn't sound like if you wrote like a novel, super easy, not a big deal. You just like update, and because it's all text. But
Yes,
in a
mostly text.
cookbook, it's all like it's all images. Like all your text is an image block, your photos are an image block. So every time you reformat your margins, your entire book just looks horrible. And so I literally would spend weeks like going in and updating. And then another thing nobody tells you is that when you're ready to like upload your document, these sites that you go on, they'll like shoot back error messages at you, and they're like, Aromath, and they're kind of clear about it, but they're like, your margins are off. And you're like, what do you mean? Like,
Yeah.
I thought you
What
said my book
margin?
was supposed to be like 8.38 by 11.2. And they're like, no, no, your inner margins are off. And I'm like, what? So there was a lot of like watching YouTube videos, crying in, my closet. And then finally, like, you're like, yes, it passed the test. And you're like, they're like, upload your cover art. And I'm like, what? And then you're like, oh, okay, yeah, perfect. I have my book cover art, but then you also need the spine and the back
Mhm.
cover art. And if all the dimensions aren't correct, then you have like gaps in your book. So it's almost like you have to be a slight mathematician to get all that right. So it's a huge learning curve, and I'm very proud to say that after months of editing, I kind of feel like it took me longer to edit the book than to write the book.
Yeah.
I think I have a format.
But
As
that's
long as
good.
I don't change the dimensions of the book. So all the books are now the same dimension, never changing.
And I think that works with your strategy about having
Yeah,
volume. So now that
yeah,
you have a standard format, now that you can go into volume two and then potentially volume three, you have a lot of that worked out. So
yeah,
I'm sure it was quite painful
yeah,
the first time around, but I think some things that are good about these processes is when you can set something up and you can rinse and repeat and do it again, then at
yeah.
least you get the benefit of all that hard work, especially as book two is going to be dropping soon.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about book one versus book two, just
Okay.
to give people kind of some, I guess, some food for thought. When you were working on book one, when you were going through the process and saying, okay, I'm going to self publish, I'm going to go through this whole process, were you prepared for the idea that, okay, I am going to do all of these books, I'm going to self publish all these books, this is how I'm going to do it? Or were you like, okay, let me just figure out book one, let me get it up and running, let me work through this whole process, and then I'll worry about book two, book three, book eight later? Or how was your planning process? Like, what was your process as you were going through this, at least for the first time?
So for the first one, I actually am pretty fortunate. I know a couple people that have published books. So I went up to them and I was talking to them about like their process. And surprisingly, a lot of them self-published. And I was like asking them about that. And they're like, well, one of the nice things is that you don't have to like hustle to get a publisher. Like the thing is that nowadays, if you want a publisher, they care about like how many followers you have, like if you have a really good platform, like, and certain genres, like, how well you can market yourself. And the one thing I thought was, you get a publisher, they do all the marketing and publicity and all that stuff for you, which they do a little bit, but you still have to do a lot of the work. And then also, like, based off the type of deal you get, like, they might if you don't sell well, they'll take your book out of print and then you don't have the rights to it anymore. And so, like, definitely, if you're going to do that and you do get a contract, make sure that if you go out of print, that you get the rights back to your book, because you'd want to, it's all that work and then you never get to sell your book again. So that would, in my opinion, really, really suck. Um, so that was something I was a little concerned about. I mean, the one thing that is definitely helpful, the publishers, they know all the printers, they deal with like all the printing and distribution and like editing for you. So like you still have to like be in the process of editing, but like that whole headache I went through with like the margins not being right, or making sure that like all of the imaging and like the paper quality and um the type of ink and everything you use, like it's great. And like also they can probably get a better deal on the price of your book because they can do it in bulk and everything.
Yeah,
So those are
volume.
just things that are a little bit easier, you don't have to worry about. And a lot of them will give you an advance, so that's great. But then the one thing, the reason why I considered self-publishing without going to a publisher for the first book was because I heard it's like almost impossible unless you're like a celebrity or something, like no one will pick you up, and that you should reach out after your second or third book. So that was the route I just decided to go on initially.
Yeah. And I think that makes sense. I think for a lot of people, they're trying to figure out how to get started. And it can be discouraging because even if you try to go the publishing route, sometimes you get those no's, you get those
Mhm.
rejections, or you can get abstract responses, not
Mhm.
responses that are very clear on why it's not
Yeah.
good to go forward, or they don't respond at all.
Yeah.
So you can kind of feel like, is this a good idea? You can almost start to doubt yourself. How did you stay strong in the process? How did you keep your kind of determination and decide that, okay, this is definitely something I want to do. Definitely this is hard.
Yeah.
Definitely this is more work than I thought it was going to be, but I'm going to see it through to the end. How did you kind of pull through that and made sure that you kind of pulled in all that resilience so that you got to the end, published, and then got all the accolades eventually?
I mean, so basically, I just didn't, I personally feel like there's nothing really like this out there. And I know that I really want something like this. And also, like, something that I really felt like I was, especially with like the cover art for my book, I was like, I really want it to be more like a photograph than a cookbook. Like, I'm looking at all these cookbook covers, and it's just like a bunch of like collages of food or a huge photo of like the chef. And I was like, there's nothing wrong with that, but I want it to look like a piece of artwork, like that you put on your like coffee table, and like people can like look at it and be like, wow, that's beautiful. I want to actually look through this. So that was my concept, and that's kind of how this image came about.
I think it's
um,
beautiful.
Thank you. That's another thing. When you are a cookbook author, you get to also be a graphic designer, a photographer, and you get to do a lot of social media stuff. So I personally am not great at like uploading content on social media and like doing voiceovers and credits, but I would do it, and I feel like it's mentally exhausting. So I would record all these videos of me making the food, and this is a fun thing that's going to be in book two. I kind of figured this would be a great idea. I haven't seen it in any books, and I thought of it when I was like almost done writing book one. So I didn't want to have to make all the recipes again. But book two, every single recipe has a QR code, and so when you're cooking it, you can scan the QR code and then watch like a 30-second to a minute and a half video of me making the recipe. So I know a lot of people are like visual learners. And also, a lot of people will look at a recipe and be like, this just looks impossible. I can't do this. But then they watch someone do it and they're like, oh, that's not as hard as I thought it was going to be. Like, challenge accepted. Let's go. So,
I like that. I think that's a great idea because,
yeah.
like you said, people are visual learners. Also, it's encouraging, especially if somebody's maybe making some of these dishes for the first time.
Mhm.
Or, sometimes when you go into world cuisine, there are ingredients that you maybe aren't used to, or ingredients that, you're just not as familiar with it. And it can get a little intimidating in the kitchen versus if you kind
Absolutely.
of see you make them. I think
Mhm.
it may make people kind of relax a little bit and, like you said, challenge accepted.
Yeah, and hopefully they think it's fun. Like
Yeah.
I try and make my recipes where I personally don't think they're too challenging, and I want people to feel like they're approachable.
Yeah, I think that's so important. So, as you started the journey, book one done, I'm going to go to book two. Anything other than the QR codes, anything that you did different, any way that you approached it differently, or for anyone out there who's self publishing now, anything that you feel is different in the industry versus then versus now when it comes to self publishing and getting a book out that people and maybe our listeners should be aware of.
I don't know anything that's necessarily different with self-publishing. I haven't encountered anything yet. As for the context of the book, there's a little bit more detail basically on like in the first like 10, 15 pages where I talk about like pantry essentials, where you can buy things, stuff like that. And it's more geared towards the countries that are in the book, and also like why I use certain spices, which ones are more prevalent in these countries. And then I talk a little bit about that. But then the format of like all of the recipes kind of holds the same as the first book. And then each country still has 12 recipes per.
Perfect. Now, which countries are in book one? Which countries are in book two?
So in book one, we have the United States, Mexico, Brazil, Peru, Italy, France, Morocco, Ethiopia, China, Thailand, Turkey, and Greece. And then in book two, we have Canada, Guatemala, Argentina, Colombia, Ireland, Spain, South Africa, Egypt, India, Japan, Lebanon, and Israel.
Wow. Now, did you travel to most of these countries as well? Or
I
how did
have.
you okay, so walk us
Yeah,
through that.
no.
Like what was the process and how did you pull
Yeah.
on those experiences to build the cookbook?
So I love to travel. It's like, you know how everybody has like a hobby? Like traveling is like one of my hobbies. Eating is like another. Like so these are just like I love to like immerse myself in these countries. Some of them I have friends that live there, some I have family, some girlfriends and I are like, yeah, let's go do this. And it's I don't just go to like eat the entire time. That's definitely something I love to do while I'm there, but I also love to do activities. So like I'm really into like scuba diving, horseback riding, other kind of extreme sports like trekking through nature. Like I love to hike and stuff. So I really love to go into like I want to say like 6 or 7 months ago, I was in Colombia and we spent like 8 hours horseback riding and going into like the jungles and getting to see like all the monkeys like swinging on the vines above us and um, really getting to see like nature and stuff. And then also like I was in the south of France and really going into all the wineries around like Bordeaux and going to other parts of Spain, and it was just like really getting to immerse myself in like the culture. So that's kind of what I do. And then other countries, I've lived in them or my family lives there. And so I've gone and visited many times.
Oh, nice. You know, one thing I think happens sometimes when we do world cuisine, sometimes world cuisine is like through an American palate or a
Yeah.
US palate versus world cuisine through the actual local palate. What was your approach? Did you go more that American side or more that local?
No, absolutely more the local. Like I really try to incorporate the texture and the taste and the feeling. Like I really feel like when people are like, "Oh, this reminds me of home," it's because of like when they smell it or they taste it, there's something in the texture and like the sense of smells that you get from when you're eating something, and maybe sometimes the visual like presentation of the food of what they're eating. So like it's not so much like you're eating it, it's the memory you get from when you're eating something that really brings you back, in my opinion. So that's why I think it's like really important for me to go to these countries. And a lot of people are like, well, you have mentioned that you don't eat meat, but you're taking these traditional dishes that normally have meat in it and you're like transforming them into a plant-based dish. How do you do that? And I if somebody knows what this is called, please let me know. But I've always been able to do this when I was in college. I also bartended, and I can kind of taste what the food or the drinks taste like in my head without eating it. If I just smell it or look at it, I just can kind of. So a lot of times when I'm building recipes, I'm like, and I'll just start writing it down, and then I'll just make it, and 90% of the time it works. Um,
That's
so
impressive. I like that superpower
yeah.
you have.
So if anybody knows what that is, that's kind of how my recipes come about. So that's really just like how it works for me. And then I like there are definitely times I'm like, oh, this is what it feels like to eat this.
Mhm.
And then I'll feed it to people that do eat
Yeah,
animal products and they're like, yes, this is good, or I think it needs a little bit of this, or whatever input I get, I try and like apply.
I think that's good. Yeah. And I think that taste testing is always key
Yeah.
because you get a sense of what people expect. Because I
Yes.
think that's the hard part about a dish. It's not always the question of does it taste good? There's the expectation that people have that you're also trying to match that
Mhm.
sometimes will make a recipe work or not work. Because
Mhm.
even when I've done something or made something vegan, they're like, this tastes good, but it doesn't taste like what you called it. And I'm like, but
Right.
wait a minute. And they're like, just call
Right.
it something else. I don't know. Have you
Exactly.
ever like run into that problem where you made something that tasted great and then people are
Yeah.
like, but it's not really that dish. I think it's more maybe a different name or a different type of dish.
I mean, yeah, and I think a lot of times too with like fusion dishes it comes like that because some of the recipes I put in the book it's like considered like fusion. Like I'll be like I'll use something that's very traditionally used in that country, but I'm like, I just think it would be really fun to throw this in there even though it might be like more prevalent in Italy, but I'm gonna put it in Japan. So there's a little bit of sprinkle of that as well. And so some people have gotten really upset when I like post things like, especially I made this Irish dish and they were like, this is not Irish. And I'm like, it's okay. Like, you don't have to eat it. Like, it's just my interpretation. I was like, but if you want to talk about why you're getting so upset, like, we can talk about that.
Yeah, I think that's the hard part. And I think that's one of those challenges, even when you go vegan,
Yeah.
that often people struggle with because there's such a cultural tie to the dishes that
Hmm.
sometimes that cultural piece, I think, is what upsets people because, it's like their grandmother's grandmother made it, or they
Yeah.
made it for them when they were a kid and it had to be done like this or in that order, or, just really specific things that
Yeah.
sometimes people feel like, a change is a variation from their culture as opposed
Yeah.
to, hey, this is just an interpretation of that dish. So
Yeah.
I can definitely understand how some people might have responded. I think I had that same challenge when I made my first vegan mac and cheese.
They're like, no, it's not right. It has to have these three ingredients. And you're like, I mean, I don't know if you've seen the 8,000 different types of mac and cheese out there now, but
Yeah,
we
yeah.
can veer a little bit. It'll be okay.
Absolutely, absolutely. The other thing that comes up a lot of times for people is, how much do you go with an authentic dish versus how much do you go with a healthy dish? Because that's always the other challenge. At times people are like, I want healthy recipes, I want healthy recipes. And at times, what I find is a lot of the origins of dishes, especially that many of us grew up and we know and love, a lot of those dishes were built out of sometimes scarcity. They were built out of only A, B, and C types of ingredients were available. So when you
Hmm.
start to go that healthy route, sometimes you lose that cultural flavor or taste. What's been your thoughts about that? Like, how do you balance that? Or do you say, hey, this is really more of a authentic cookbook. If you want healthy options, it's a different direction. How do you kind of slice that challenge that people sometimes face?
I think it's a slightly challenging thing too, because I think a lot of people consider healthy divided differently. Because like some people are
Mhm.
like, sugar is unhealthy. And I'm like, maybe, but some is okay in moderation also. So like if that were the case, all the desserts are probably unhealthy. But my approach is like everything is healthy or unhealthy in moderation. So like also like spinach is very healthy, but if you only eat spinach every day, all day, and nothing else, that's not going to be healthy. So I think if you take everything you need and, do like a whole food based program and you get like all the nutrients and all the vitamins and all the proteins you need, like, and kind of mix up your food, then I think personally it's okay. So, I mean, there's definitely some recipes that are healthier in the book and some that are a little less healthy. I always try and use like the most natural ingredients that I can find. And then also there are some like I'm of the belief that like there's products out there and people sometimes are busy and they can't maybe find like jackfruit or like soy protein or TVB protein or something and they're like I don't have time to order it online. I need to make something right now. So I also don't believe that like eating some of these like fake meat products is necessarily bad for you if you do it in moderation. So, like, I will say I put like every 1 in 8 recipes, I will add some like vegan ground beef or like vegan chicken or something.
Mhm.
Because I want people to know how to use them also. And I feel like if you restrict everything all the time, you're just going to go on a binge eventually and just like have like, you're going to end up feeling sick. You're like, all I did was eat
Yeah.
cake all day. So, like, I think a little bit every now and then is probably fine. But yeah, my approach is like whole food, mostly vegetables, good protein on most of the time, and then a dabble here and there.
No, that makes sense. That definitely makes sense. Now, I know we're going a little bit longer, but I want to talk about a couple of other things before we wrap up because I want to talk about the award, what
Oh,
that was like for the first book. Did you have to put a submission in? Like, what was the process for that? And then a couple other things I want to talk about. But let's talk about the award. Um, what was it like to get recognized, especially for a book that was a labor of love, a book that I'm sure at times it was just like, maybe like I said earlier, had some doubts, had all these different mixed emotions to get to the point where not only is your book out and people are loving it and using it, but to also get recognition. What was it like and what was that process like?
it was awesome. So, it was really funny because my older sister is like, I think she is like my publicist, but not being my publicist. Like she's amazing. Like she's always like, "Oh, check this out, check this out." And so she was like, "The Zigbee Awards are you should apply." And I was like, "Really?" And I was looking into it and I was like, "Okay, yeah, no, I'll do it." So I just sent an email. I sent them a copy of my book and I kind of was like, well, we'll see. I kind of, it was one of those things like you're like, oh, the lottery's happening. I'm gonna submit a ticket, like, but I'm not gonna win. And then when they emailed me, I kind of was like, and I like read it 3 times, and then I was like, honey, like to my husband, I was like, look at this. He's like, oh my God, that's amazing. And then they were like, we're going to send you like the little like sticker and everything, and you can like put it on your book. And I was just like, this is amazing. And so it kind of felt like surreal at first. I was like, what does this mean? But it also felt really gratifying because like it's one of those things you're like, I know I'm in like a niche, but it feels really good that somebody recognizes like and likes what I did. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's amazing when people can kind of see you through your work, and it's
Yeah.
that recognition that, kind of motivates you to keep going. My other question that I want to talk about is a little bit about how the book fits into your full business. I think for a lot of people, they think about, okay, if I just write a book, then my business will soar. If I just get that book out, that's my big break kind of thing. How did you kind of use the book to complement what you had going on in your business? And how did you kind of come up with an idea of being a little more diversified in building your business as opposed to just thinking one aspect of your business was going to be the key, the idea that, it really is going to take this diversification to keep your business afloat, successful and profitable.
No, and there is a little bit of that where I was like, I wrote a book and it's going to become a bestseller and everyone's just going to buy it. And then there was all this hype, like from friends and family, like you're like, come support me. And like, so the sales were like really great the first week because all your friends and family buy it. And then you're like, nothing. And I'm like, oh, I got to promote this. So that was a whole new level of like learning because I was like, I am not in marketing. I have no idea what I'm doing. So you're like, how do I do that? So I went online and I was like, how do you market a cookbook? And like, got my little checklist and I'm like, okay, reach out to bookstores. And so a lot of bookstores, if you're self-published, they'll, a lot of times you can do consignment or they'll put a certain amount of your books in their store, or you can do it on like Ingram Spark or something. The problem with that is that a lot of them have a cap of $20. And anybody that's made a cookbook, unless you're going black and white, it's really expensive to print because you have to do highest quality paper quality. Everything has to be in color. Every page has photos. So it costs, if you're doing print on demand, unless you can find somewhere to print, the book's cheaper, but then you have to like, you know, distribute them yourself and like
Mhm.
them in a warehouse or something. So the cost of it doesn't make sense and you wouldn't really make a profit. So I was like, okay, so that kind of is out. So you're like, do I do like street fairs? Do I find restaurants? Like how do I get this book out there? So there's a lot of like different platforms on like, how do I market this? And that's something also that I'm still working on. And then also like for things like my cooking classes and my private chef experiences, like I kind of leverage the book that way too. I'm like, we can do a custom menu, or I have these menus already built. But I've had people reach out and they're like, we saw your book and we'd love to do a cooking class on, can we just do one chapter or these three things, or can we do these six recipes or something? And then it's really fun for them too, because they're like, look, we have the book and we have the chef and we're making things together. And so that's something. Or they're like, we're having a private event and we want these recipes from the book. So that's something that I also have been doing.
Perfect. What would you say? I mean, as a person who, like you said, wasn't really doing all the marketing initially, and like you said, didn't necessarily like love being on, social media all day. What would you say? Was it like one or two big marketing things that made a difference in your book? Or do you feel like it was doing a lot of little things together that created the groundswell for you?
I think it's just doing a lot of little things all the time. Like, I think there's definitely people that do one video, and hopefully that's me at some point too, and they just like go viral. And then you're like, yay. And then, but then, I mean, I think you still have to like keep marketing. Like, it's not like you're just forever going to be, unless you have like Julia Child's like cooking book, and then it just kind of, people just buy it for whatever, like forever. So you just have to like keep getting your name out there. And yeah, I think it's just like keep getting the word out there, keep doing marketing things, keep reaching out to restaurants, keep reaching out to bookstores, like trying to get more clients. And then also, like, a lot of people are like, I'm not vegan. And I'm like, that's okay. Do you like food? Like, it doesn't have to be like, like, I have a lot of people like, I'm not vegan, but I am trying to eat more plants. I'm like, great, let's just start there. Um, and the whole premise of the book is not so much about like just plant based. Like, yes, I personally think that's important, but I also think it's like diversifying like the foods you eat. Like, a lot of people, like, they eat a lot of dairy, they eat a lot of eggs, they eat a lot of meat because that's what's thrown into our culture. And it's like you go to the store and everything has dairy and eggs in it, but it doesn't have to. There's like many, many different ways to like incorporate new ingredients. And then also people are like, I don't like vegetables. And I'm like, well, what kind of vegetables do you eat? And they list like five vegetables. And I'm like, there's hundreds of vegetables out there. You just have to like, that whole section you walk past every day at the grocery store and you're like, I don't know what that is. Maybe just pick it up. Like, take a photo on your phone and be like, what is this? And then, you'd be like, oh, okay, I'm going to try and make a recipe out of this. But yeah, there's so many times I'll make a recipe and people are like, what am I eating? And they're like, it's amazing. And I'm like, oh, that's bok choy. That's asparagus. Well, most people know asparagus, but like, I'm like, oh, that's yucca root. And they're like, oh,
Mhm.
I've never heard of it. And I'm like, you can buy it in any grocery store.
Yeah, I think people are really surprised of the variety that's out there. And also, I think a lot of people, had someone cook vegetables a certain way, and
Yes.
that's what they think kind of it just always tastes like.
Yeah.
Or I've run across a lot of people, I don't know if you've done this too, but I've had people who ate a lot of canned vegetables. And when they ate a lot of canned vegetables as a kid, the texture is
Yeah.
very different than fresh. So
Yeah. Absolutely.
therefore, I mean, like that jump sometimes either A, introducing them to fresh or
Yes.
helping them realize that, canned spinach doesn't taste the same way as fresh spinach. They're like very night
Absolutely.
and day different. So,
One thing too
um,
is that I think people need to realize if they're going to use canned vegetables, that there's a way to use them. Like, they just think like, I'm going to pour it out of this can and it's ready. And I'm like, well, kind of, but like, if you're going to use canned spinach, like, add it to like a stir fry or something, like something where you would already reduce the spinach so it's already wilted, like, and then maybe add some spices to it. But like, if you're having a salad, like, go grab the fresh spinach. If you want something that's more crisp, grab the fresh vegetables. Like, um, it definitely is like a little bit different on like how you're going to prepare something. So think about that. And also sometimes, like, I don't notice this that much, but I know sometimes, like, especially like with like canned carrots or potatoes or something, like, they sometimes you can taste the aluminum in it a little bit. So that's just something to
yes.
consider too. But I'm never about to tell somebody, if you're in a huge rush and you don't have time to boil the potatoes and you just have to grab that can, like, it's not the end of the world. But prep, I think how you prep your food is like the most important thing to make it taste good. If you just spend a little bit of extra time prepping and spicing your food, it's going to make a world of difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think the point you made about knowing when to use which item in which dish can make a big difference, because they're not always interchangeable.
Yeah.
When you need that fresh or when you need that canned, I think can make a big difference. So let's talk about the new book. I want to make sure that people can, number one, know where to get the first book,
Yes.
and the new book. What's the process? When's it coming out? How can they get in touch? If they're all excited, should they email you now? And then when the book comes out, are you going to send them an email? Like, if someone's really fired up and they want to at least get volume one, and then they're going to sit in line waiting to get volume two, how do they do that? Let's walk them through that process in case
Yeah.
people are ready to go.
So, volume one, you can find on Amazon or Ingram Spark. It's called Vegan Flavors of the World, a culinary explanation, plant based recipes from every corner of the globe. Or you can search for my name, Rachel Adina Mullen, Adina Mullen, Mullen, probably, I think it shows up. Or just look at, if anything else fails, just look for this photo. It's kind of memorable. And the second book will have kind of the same kind of artwork. I'm dabbling between a couple different images right now. It second book will also be available on Amazon and Ingram Spark, and the title will be Vegan Flavors of the World Volume 2, a deeper journey, plant-based dishes inspired by global traditions. I'm currently doing the final edits right now, and then I will complete my cover art. So I'm thinking it'll be done in the next month or two. And if you're interested and you want to get on the waiting list or something, you can reach me on any of my socials or my email. Everything's at Adina's Delicacies. My email is at adinasdelicacies@gmail.com. And then my website, which you can also reach me at and find all my socials, is at adinasdelicacies.com.
Perfect. Well, thanks for hanging out with me a little bit longer than usual
Absolutely.
for this podcast. It's always good when we can cover a lot of topics. And it's also fun to just hear the story of why and how you created your cookbook, the series, the background on self publishing. I think for a lot of people, this will be exciting for them, and even people who are just maybe in the market for a cookbook may
Yeah.
be really excited about, an opportunity to tap into all of these cuisines. Because you're right, a lot of times when I see cookbooks, you'll maybe see a couple of countries, but the variety of countries that you're covering in each volume is impressive.
Thank you.
And the different types, like, sometimes people just do like Europe, or, what I mean? They just kind of do one
Yeah.
continent. It's really exciting to hear when you were listing off all the different countries, how you were jumping to different parts of the world,
Yeah.
so that there's almost a little bit of unique flavors in all the corners of your book. So I'm really excited for anyone out there who's looking for a new cookbook. They really should consider and think about picking up volume one, and definitely showing up from volume two when it's launched.
Thank you. Yeah. Please check it out. It was a labor of love.
So, as we wrap up, I do want to make sure everyone goes to your site and your socials. We will definitely list those in the show notes so people can check them out and get in touch with you. I want to say thank you so much for your time today. Thanks so much for answering all my questions. It's always good to dive deep into these things from an entrepreneurial standpoint, but also from a vegan standpoint, and just generally kind of chit chatting about the fun journey of creating something beautiful in the world and getting it out to people. Once again, congratulations on your recognition
Thank
for
you.
your first book. Absolutely. And it was just wonderful to have you today. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And thank you, everyone who listened to this podcast, whether you listened to it on our YouTube channel or you streamed it, or however you're accessing this content. We're always excited to have you here. We're always excited to hear your feedback. We're always hoping you support our guests, because it's so important that we support our community. So I hope you do check out the book and pick up the book. But I definitely want to say thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you in our next interview. Bye, everyone.